Welcome to another video in my Death Row Dinners series. Tonight's dinner will be that of Barton Kay Kirkham, and I have ordered it from a takeaway, so it's on its way to me now. Once it arrives, settle down and I'll tell you the story of Barton Kay Kirkham and the crime which landed him on death row. So my meal has arrived. I have gone for a Domino's pizza, medium size, and this is a create your own with mushrooms on an Italian base. Barton also had ice cream, and I will be having some of this carte d'or vanilla and brownie flavour, and of course garlic and herb dip for the pizza. Barton Kay Kirkham was born on November 29th, 1936 to Earl and Olive Kirkham, and he was the eldest of 5 children. He had 2 younger brothers and 2 younger sisters. The Kirkhams lived in Salt Lake City in Utah, and they were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS, also known as Mormons. I'm not going to go into the LDS church beliefs in any great depth, but one of their core beliefs is that of the traditional nuclear family. So you have a mother, you have a father, then you have the children, and there are specific gender roles. Homosexuality is considered a sin. As a youngster, Kirkham displayed very little in the way of any kind of emotion. He never cried when he was smacked, and he never seemed to feel any sort of guilt or remorse for anything that he did. He wasn't exactly a keen scholar and spent a lot of time bunking off school, or as they call it in Utah, sloughing. In Scotland, where I am, it's referred to as dogging school, but dogging has a very different meaning in the rest of the UK. Kirkham considered himself to be something of a rebel, and at the age of 17, after failing at several jobs, he left the LDS Church and his family to enlist in the US Air Force. His role in the Air Force was that of a jet mechanic. Kirkham trained at San Antonio in Texas. Once this training was complete, he was assigned to the Mountain Home Air Force Base. During a mission to England, he was disciplined for shacking up with a girl, and he was sent back to the Mountain Home Base. And this base was in Idaho. Once he was back there, Kirkham tried without success to persuade his parents to bring the girl over to America. When it was clear they were not going to do this, he went AWOL. Whilst he was AWOL, he committed armed robbery, and this got him arrested. He went to a local pawn shop, purchased a gun, and then stole a car. This was 1955, and as a result, he was discharged from the Air Force as a deserter. He was convicted and sentenced to 9 months at the Colorado Reformatory in Buena Vista. He served his time and never showed any regret while he was there for the crime he had committed. His parents would visit him regularly And he didn't have any sense that he'd done anything wrong. Once his time was served, he was released into his parents' custody, and this was the 31st of May in 1956. Whilst he was back at home, Kirkham's parents noticed he was displaying some odd behaviour. He'd often be highly agitated and would get extremely excited. He also liked to creep up behind the children in the house, grab them and shout loudly. But when he did this, it wasn't with any sense of fun, not the way a parent or older sibling might usually attempt to scare a young child and laugh about it. There was none of that in Kirkham's case. He also had a spinal abscess, and this caused him extreme pain. And a number of dental cavities, probably not really relevant to the story, but it was in the research, so I'm slipping it in. He was seeing a family doctor to get the abscess taken care of, and his mother mentioned the episodes of odd behaviour to the doctor. She was concerned that maybe some sort of psychiatric evaluation was necessary, but of course, this didn't happen. You may have worked out by now that Kirkham quite liked the ladies, and he did start seeing a girl, but once he told her about his criminal record, she did not want anything more to do with him. And he was, I think, understandably, a little bit down about this. 2.5 months after this, on August 11th, 1956, Kirkham went to the Nibley Park Market grocery store with the intention of purchasing a pack of cigarettes. Earlier that day, he had gone to the Hotel Utah to visit a friend who worked there. That friend noted that Kirkham was wearing the same outfit that he'd worn when he committed the armed robbery that landed him in jail, and he had said on several occasions that next time he committed a crime, he was going to wear that same outfit. So that was kind of a clue that Barton maybe wasn't fully intending just to purchase cigarettes. Once he left the hotel, he drove around aimlessly for several hours, and it was about 11 p.m. when he came across a car with a number of young men in it. He followed this group of young men until their car pulled over. Then he pulled up alongside their vehicle and brandished a gun at them and asked them if they were looking for a beef. One of the young men asked him if the gun was loaded, and in response to this, Kirkham ejected a shell, and then he drove off. And the young men did report this to the police. It was at 11:30 p.m. that Barton entered the Nibley Park grocery store. It was being manned by David Avon Frame, and he was a 50-year-old father of one. Kirkham demanded that David hand over the day's takings, and in fear for his life, David did indeed give Kirkham the contents of the till. This amounted to $54. Kirkham became angry and refused to believe that this was all the money that was in the store, and he forced Frame into the back apartment of the store at gunpoint. The back room was not empty. 37-year-old Ruth Webster, mother of 4, was in there polishing a pair of shoes for her daughter. David and Ruth were actually looking after the store as a favour to the owners who had gone on holiday. Kirkham forced them both to go into the bathroom and lie on the floor. He then shot them both in the head. Kirkham drove away from the scene, and as he was doing so, he accidentally shot a hole in the windscreen of the car he was driving, forcing him to abandon it. It was about midnight when Kirkham knocked on the door of Mrs. Bonnie Christian. He threatened her with the gun. He told her he had just killed 2 people and demanded to know if she had a car. She told him she didn't, but her son Arthur did, and he would soon be returning home. Kirkham waited with Bonnie, but Arthur was not the first of the Christian children to return home. 17-year-old Shauna came home first. She'd actually been out on a date, and Kirkham also held her at gunpoint along with her mother and forced them all to wait until Arthur returned with the car. As they were waiting, Kirkham regaled them with the tale of his time in Colorado, which, as you can imagine, to be told by a man holding you at gunpoint that he has already been in jail and he's just killed 2 people, pretty terrifying. I cannot imagine how that would feel, especially if I was just 17. When 21-year-old Arthur did return home, Kirkham forced him and Shauna into the car and told their mother if she called the police, he would kill her children. Arthur was driving the car, Shauna was in the passenger seat, and Kirkham sat in the back seat, holding the gun and alternately pointing it at their heads. Arthur tried to talk quietly to Kirkham to try and build some sort of rapport with him, as Kirkham forced him to drive south towards Provo in Utah. Kirkham made them stop at one point and purchase $5 worth of gas. He then made Arthur put the radio on, but there were no reports of the crime that Kirkham had committed coming over the airwaves. Kirkham commented that this was because nobody had the guts to talk about what he had done. He told the brother and sister that Ruth had been hysterical and David had tried to play the hero before he shot them. Kirkham eventually ordered Arthur to pull off the highway, get out of the car and start walking. And if he didn't do this, Kirkham would shoot him dead. Arthur did as he was told, and as he was walking away from the vehicle, Kirkham fired a shot sort of overhead but in his direction, and this was basically a warning to show both Arthur and Shauna that he really meant it. Kirkham then made Shauna take over driving, and she drove aimlessly around with him for a further hour and a half. It was round about 4:30 a.m. that the Utah police received a call from a payphone, and this was Kirkham, and he said,
"I'm up at Provo Canyon, and I have a girl in the car, and I want you to pick me up before I cause more trouble. Turn your red lights on for identification. I won't cause you any trouble when you come."
True to his word, and my very bad attempt at a Southern American accent, apologies to anyone watching who is Southern American, Kirkham gave himself up voluntarily. Deputy Sheriff Reed L. Rigtrup testified that Kirkham confessed he had committed the robbery and killing because of an anniversary celebration that was meant to happen the following week, but he took the opportunity to just do it then and there. Another officer, Officer Hunsaker, testified that Kirkham seemed to relish the retelling of the murder. And once again, he showed absolutely no remorse. Kirkham was detained in the Salt Lake City jail awaiting trial, and he was assessed by 2 medical doctors, one of whom was also a psychiatrist. Dr. Clarence Craig Nelson stated that he believed Kirkham was suffering from a severe personality disorder and that without treatment, the only change that would occur would be for the worse. On December 12th, 1956, Kirkham stood trial for first-degree murder, and he was found guilty 2 days later on December 14th. It's important to note this was for the murder of David Frame, and Kirkham faced a mandatory death penalty. He was never actually tried for the murder of Ruth Webster. The jury only took 2.5 hours to return their verdict of guilty, and Kirkham was then remanded into custody awaiting sentencing. The defence wasted no time in filing an appeal against this conviction. The grounds for appeal were that their client, Kirkham's mental condition, was not properly taken into account. The appeal was heard and denied on March 25th, 1958. The district attorney stated that if he was found not guilty, Kirkham would be released back into society and that he would present an ongoing threat. The defence argued if he was found not guilty by reason of insanity, he would actually be looking at a stint in a psychiatric unit rather than just being set free to roam wild. The district attorney's statement was not factually correct, but the jury still believed it. They felt the only way to ensure Kirkham could not commit any more motiveless acts of violence against the public was to keep him behind bars. So the conviction was upheld. The judge passed the death sentence on April 26, 1958. Kirkham was offered a choice between a firing squad or hanging. In order to make his decision, Kirkham wanted to know which of the two methods would inconvenience the state the most. He then opted for hanging because, as well as being the most inconvenient, it would be the more expensive option, and also for the novelty value because nobody had been hanged since 1912 in Utah. During his time on death row, Kirkham was described as being a good prisoner, although he did sometimes go out of his way to annoy the guards. He refused for 13 months to have his hair cut at all, and then just shaved it all off himself purely to irritate them. He also intently followed news coverage of his case and had a great interest in medical and psychiatric papers and journals and texts. The following is taken from a written statement by Kirkham before his execution.
There was so much hate in me then, and it keeps building up, and there was no release for it, and I did not care what happened. The doctors said I felt justified when I killed those people, and they are right. I did. It was revenge I was after, the love that I was denied because my parents spent so much time doing church work, and they still do, and forcing me to stay home and lead the life they wanted me to live. I got my revenge, and I am not sorry now, and never will be. I've had enough of it. I want to die. I'm fed up with it all. I did kill those people to hurt my parents and their good standing in the church. Who failed me? It was not only my parents, but myself and a lot of others. My life is a real mess now, and I will be glad when it is all over with.
2 scoops of quite melted ice cream, but never mind. The night before his execution, Kirkham was visited by his parents. Prison guards noticed a change in his demeanour. He actually greeted his parents very warmly. And he was also seen by both a Mormon and a Catholic priest. The Kirkhams watched a movie together, ate pizza, as I have just done, and had some ice cream. And Kirkham then entertained the officers and clerics by playing on a piano and cracking jokes about his impending execution. It was at dawn on June the 7th, 1958, that Kirkham was driven 2 miles to a pasture on the prison farm, and a gallows had been specially erected in that location. A black hood was placed over his head, and then the noose was put around his neck. He trembled slightly as the noose was being fitted, and this was the only show of any kind of emotion or fear at what was about to happen to him. Understandably, his family chose not to witness the hanging. At 4:57 a.m, the hangman was signalled to pull the lever. This released the trapdoor and caused Kirkham to drop 6 feet. Kirkham's final words were, "I've asked God to forgive me." He was the last prisoner to be hanged in Utah, and this method of execution was actually completely discontinued in 1980. So Kirkham will forever be known as the last prisoner to be hanged in Utah. That's exactly why he chose hanging, and he'd probably be quite happy to learn he was the final prisoner to be executed in that way. Whilst there is no doubt Kirkham committed these murders, I do feel that both the medical and judicial systems really let him down. There just was not the same understanding of mental health and mental illness that we have today, and saying that, we still have an awfully long way to go. If Kirkham's issues had been acted on when his mother first alerted the doctor to behaviours that she felt were odd, it's perfectly possible these murders could have been prevented. I'm no psychiatrist, and I'm no expert on personality disorders. I don't know if there's any way Kirkham could have gone on to lead a normal life, but certainly I think he could have led a life that would not have involved killing anyone. And he was young when he died. He was never given the chance to find out. He was never given that opportunity. As always, I want to leave you with the images of David Frame and Ruth Webster, 2 innocent parents minding a shop for their friends. They lost their lives for the meagre sum of $54. Thank you for watching this video. Take care.